So they've been around for about over a year now, and have experienced a lot of different things. I think a lot of successes. They were able to shut down through the FOIA process, shut down a pediatric transgender clinic in USC, a clinic that was that actually a group called the American Accountability Foundation highlighted. They were offering hormone therapy and puberty blockers to kids as young as 4 years old. Through what the Freedom Caucus did, submitting that FOIA request, asking for more information, they actually ended up closing the doors before even giving all the information away. So now, thankfully, the 104 kids that went through there, are now traumatized for life. There won't be any more kids who are affected by that. So that was a huge moment and win for the Freedom Caucus. Additionally, they were able to, through another individual coming to them, uncover some pretty blatant critical race theory that was being used in schools in Lexington District 1 and Charleston school districts. There was a video taken from a person who she didn't realize she was being videotaped at the time, but a person was talking to this lady who was an out-of-state consultant from a group called Yale Education. And this lady was a professional trainer. She was being brought into the state to teach teachers how to teach better and to kind of professionally grow them. And in the video, she literally says, and I quote, "I don't need allies, I need co-conspirators to break the law." Wow. And this is in South Carolina schools. Now, a lot of people in the legislature and other places will tell you that there's no such thing as critical race theory. We can't define it. It's a law school thing. It's not happening here. It's pretty blatant proof that it is, in fact, happening here. And so that was another thing that South Carolina Freedom Caucus did. They're still in those lawsuits, and they're moving along. There's a lot of other battles and fights that have been taken. I think the main thing that the South Carolina Freedom Caucus, and I'm going to let them talk about it more once they get up here, but the main thing that they were attempting to do in this first year, obviously, there's 88 Republicans in the House, there's 36 Democrats, and their numbers are about 20 or so, the Freedom Caucus. Clearly, there's a numbers disadvantage, but year one, the goal was to change the culture, to start exposing what is actually happening in Columbia for the voters to see, so that they can have a better opportunity to choose, is this what I want my elected official representative to be voting like? Is this what I want my representation to look like? And so it was really to establish a culture change in a place that has for years not had that. It's called the establishment for a reason, because it's established. It has not changed. It's been there the way it is, and frankly, the people that are in power want to stay that way. But you alluded to South Carolina as for 3 years running, the American Conservative Union and CPAC have said we are the most liberal red legislator in the country. Recently, the Daily Wire took some additional data from ACU and CPAC, and they took it across every state. They looked at all the Republicans and every state legislator and said, let's rank the Republicans only in each house, and let's see which one is conservative, which one's liberal. South Carolina came in 49th. The only state to beat South Carolina Republicans in being more liberal was Hawaii. Connecticut was right there with us. We barely edged them out. Connecticut was right there with us, but New York, Michigan, Ohio, all these other states, their Republicans are actually acting more conservatively. Florida was at the top of the tip of the spear, along with states like Tennessee. So that is really what the Freedom Caucus is kind of here to do, is to move the GOP and the South Carolina House more to the right, move them back to the party platform, move them back to the issues that we all hold dear, and to actually hold some of these elected officials accountable for the way they are voting. So with that, I'm going to bring up April Cromer. She's from Anderson. She's a small business owner, and then Jordan Pace, who is the hometown guy here tonight, who is a commercial real estate guy, right? That's it. So if you want to sit, we can kind of start.
All right, Jordan.
Newly elected, never had a desire or thought to be in politics until about September of 21. I was trying to find people to run for the person in our district. I believe in term limits. who's speaking for us? Who is out there advocating for our kids and for our small businesses? So looking into that and seeing, like he said, I realized that we are not a red state. We are a purple state. And that bothered me. So I was trying to find someone to run, and during that time, it just occurred to me that I'm at a point in my life where I can run. I've been married 24 years. We have 2 kids. They're 21 and 23. So we entered the race. We prayed over it, and it was for such a time as this, and we won. So I thought, well, I'll take my conservative values to Columbia, and when I got there, I was surprised to be kicked out of the Republican Party. I said, well, and I probably shouldn't say this, but I said, I'm the most Republican person in my delegation. I can't believe they're kicking me out. Who is the arbiter of the Republican platform? And he said, you have to realize that each person represents their district differently. We all have different needs in our district. I'm like, well, that is true, but then there's the Republican platform. So where is the truth? So I think it's important to know who your representative is, how they're voting, and are they representing you? Do you have a voice? Are they answering your emails? Are they answering your calls? We didn't have that so much in the upstate, so that's why, like I said, I ran. How much of a speaker? I'm trying to think what else I was going to say. So, another thing, when we got there, there's some bills that have come through, and I think with all the seats that we flipped and turned over this last time, they would see the urgency of the people's needs, the voice, what they're wanting. And I don't think that we're really seeing that with the bills that we're passing and the urgency. They say, oh, well, we don't have time to get that through committee. We've got all this other stuff we have to do. It's just too hard. But it's very, very easy for them to spend $1.4 billion in tax credits and $400 million in cash. Oh, it's all cash. So, excuse me. They can do that in 12 days. But we can't pass DEI law, CRT protections, or anything for true school choice. We don't have money to just open our schools up. That would be too much of a stress.
It's just like that.
Can't give people income
The open carry law was bullshit.
tax relief. So just to keep that in mind, I think it's
They
important
attached it to a CWP.
like I said, know who you're representing. Look into yourself and say, should I be on the ballot? Could I run? Do I know someone who can run? Can I support them? Because once you do find someone to run, I campaigned on. I gave everyone in my district my cell phone number, thankfully, because keep getting texts and stuff sent out about me that has my cell phone number, my name on it. And I said, well, there are 2 things that are accurate on that mailer: my phone number and my name. But my people already have that information anyway. And so I would just encourage you to look for people to run if your representative isn't representing you the way you want to be represented, and support them once they do run, or maybe it's you. I would give it to Jordan and take any questions out of him.
I'm a member state. Good.
Yeah.
Unless you live in my district. So my name is Jordan Pace. I see a lot of familiar faces and friendly faces here. Thank y'all for coming. Can y'all hear me okay? Kind of getting over.
Yeah.
There we go. Thank you. I've got an 18-month-old baby. If you hang around toddlers much, the germ factory, so it's just always something. So I had this unique, weird experience where I got elected in November. I beat a Democrat. You might have heard of her, Crystal Matthews. Fill the news a little bit.
Crystal Beth.
So I had this weird experience for the first
Crystal Matthews.
We went up and all the freshmen Republicans were about the caucus meeting. We wanted to change the rules. And everybody was in the news for when the guy beat such and such. Not against me, it's 117 before down the else. So that Jordan, I beat Crystal Matthews, and I get this weird standing ovation. And the next caucus meeting, they barred me from coming inside. It was very weird. So, welcome.
They're like, love you, bye.
Yeah. So, to echo kind of what y'all were saying, the culture in Columbia was set up to be non-transferable. I mean, in 1895, when they wrote the Constitution, the guys who wrote this Constitution were not good guys. They were bad actors. And they wrote it in a way to make sure that a small group of people, at the time, kind of the standard white landowner folks have always been in power, stayed in power, and that the lower people, the plebes, didn't ask questions, it didn't really have an effect. They set things up to be non-transparent. So if you get a group of people who are very avid about transparency in government and knowing how your legislators vote, it stirs the pot quite a bit. You're going to get a lot of friction. So that's what we're seeing. We're seeing a whole lot of friction in 3 or 4 months. I mean, some of y'all probably have gotten a text today. If you live in my district, a text went out. If whoever this group is, this kind of dark money group, has spent at least $200,000, by my guess, in mail and text messages and other stuff, all around the state, attacking the most conservative members of the House, with lies, half-truths, all this stuff. So that tells me we're making progress. Ron Paul has this wonderful saying about power. When he got in the House, he said, first they ignore you, then they make fun of you, and then they'll try to like ostracize you. If you stick around long enough, you got support, people will back you, keep you in office long enough, they'll eventually have to work with you to accomplish the things you want to accomplish. So I don't know where we are in this stage, probably in the ostracize and attack mode, but it's the same cycle no matter whether we're looking at whatever government system it is, that's the way things work. So we have to get through this part of friction to get the goal of government that responds to people, that reflects the values of people like y'all that want smaller government, that want our Second Amendment rights, that want to protect babies in the womb.
Yeah.
These core Republican platform issues that we all vote on, like May 20th, we go up to the convention and vote on the platform. And most of us, the 88 of us that are in the House, that were elected as Republicans, ran on that Republican platform. So that's the goal. That's why the Freedom Caucus exists, is to try to push against the left drift. And that's just physics. My wife teaches 8th grade science, and she was going through a lesson one day, and it kind of really clicked in my head that this applies to politics. If you've got one force moving this way, and there's nothing pushing back the other direction, well, what's the inevitable outcome of that? You're just going to keep moving that direction. So we had to become the equal and opposite reaction to kind of go to Newtonian physics to push back toward the platform. So I appreciate y'all being here. We don't get into office without folks like y'all, the activists. I was raised by the Tea Party. I got into South Carolina politics working for Governor Sanford in 2013. My job was to go to all the Tea Party meetings, all the Republican Party meetings. That's where I met many of y'all back in the mid-2000s, 2010s. In that Tea Party movement, where we were dissatisfied with our then Republican majority in Congress, because they were doing very non-Republican, still are, right? And at the time it was Bader. We saw from the Tea Party what can be accomplished. We saw from the Congressional Freedom Caucus just a few months ago, when they stood together and what they got from McCarthy. I mean, this is radical change, and how business has been done in Congress, because guys like Ralph Norman and Andy Biggs and like those guys stuck together. They held their position. They didn't compromise. And when they had a win, they took the win. They moved the ball forward. So that's the goal. I will ramble on forever if you like to say. I'd rather take questions if y'all have questions.
Well, okay.
Yeah.
I got a bucket up there. Did everybody put their questions in the bucket? No.
I have a hand.
Well, go ahead, then I'll grab the bucket, and that way we can kind of keep score.
What do you think as your first year as a freshman was your biggest accomplishment so far? And how did you get there? How did you accomplish that accomplishment? How did you get there? And what does the people do for you? Meaning us.
So there was a bill about, ostensibly it was supposed to be about anti-Semitism. The Democrat brought, since the Democrat subcommittee chairwoman in the Judiciary Committee. But within that anti-Semitism bill, we're all against anti-Semitism, was a section there that would have basically created a DEI requirement for all state employees. So diversity, equity, and inclusion requirements already all universities were paying for. look for state employees. So we raised some hay about that through the committee process, which was before it came up to the floor. And when it came up to the floor, it wound up being pulled back to committee because we made so much noise. So we put a stop to that. I think that was a pretty good compliment.
If you guys want to read them, not many people fill them out, then you can just raise hands.
It says, why did the Freedom Caucus vote for the tax raising and growing government bill 539 ESA instead of fixing the S39 ESA bill instead of fixing the South Carolina Department of Education?
What was the question?
Well, I would say that that bill is what we can get right now for as far as education goes, school choice, and that's right now it's helping more of special needs kids and kids of lower income. And I think those needs are so important that they're being stuck and trapped in the classroom. The teachers aren't meeting their needs. You have special needs kids that are on the spectrum, they're in the classroom, and it's not fair to the teacher and to the students around the student because their needs aren't being met.
I can tell you why I voted for it. So S39 was the very, very small kind of anemic school choice bill, 5,000 student cap, came out of the Senate. Had those income requirements or special need requirements. So let's say school choice. I mean, this is like 3-yard gain, not even touching it. It does move the ball forward, but the idea there is to create a level of competition. So just like we have grocery stores competing against each other, try and then lately fail to keep food prices down. Thanks, Bob. The idea is if we can create just a little bit of school choice, move that forward to show some results. Hey, this is working for these 5,000 students, 10,000 students next year. It helps our case to get universal school choice for everybody. The other side of that too is in South Carolina, our Constitution, that 1895 Constitution I mentioned, there's a section called the Lane Amendment that was added, and the Lane Amendment says that the state tax dollars can't go to private entities. So that was the basis by which a couple years ago, Governor McMaster tried to put some of that COVID money toward scholarships for students. The Supreme Court struck it down based on the plan. So the injunction is already prepared for S39. As soon as the governor signs it, they're going to file the injunction to ed folks to try to shut it down and likely get injuncted. Basically, it's going to be a test case to see whether the Lane Amendment actually stands. If the money goes to the parents, not the schools. So that's going to be kind of a test on, can we do a voucher type system like we have in Florida, Arizona, Iowa, the dozens of other states that have already passed some form of it. Can we do that without repealing the Lane Amendment? The House has already passed a resolution to repeal the Lane Amendment. So the Senate, if the Senate passes it, it'll be a referendum for everybody. So that's why I voted for S39.
There's another piece to that too. So this is a state savings account bill, which you mentioned is kind of minuscule when you apply 5,000 students to meet certain requirements. But there is another bill that is getting a hearing. Did it get a hearing? Thursday. And it is a tax credit bill. So if we get that through committee and to the floor, it would put us more in line as a state with a place like Florida, which has more of this hybrid model for school choice. And the idea, like you said, it's to open up competition. It's to let parents who are paying, property tax dollars and all these things, who may currently have their students in a Christian school or private school, they're essentially funding other kids to go to public schools. They can now use those dollars to appropriate them and help their kids get the education that they need. And it definitely will help, as you alluded to, some in neighborhoods, some special needs kids and things like that. So there is a game plan to get more of a universal, multifaceted options for parents to choose where to send their kids to school. As far as the Department of Ed goes, I think that a lot of us would say that we would love to do different things with both federally and at the state level to kind of restriction control. Thankfully, we have Ellen Weaver in there right now, who is a great lady. She's done a ton of work with Call Me No Promise, which is Jim DeMint's think tank on this specific issue. We don't have as many concerns about her, but certainly less government is always better. So kind of lowering the amount of power and control that any government bureaucracy has is always a good thing as well. But I don't know what the appetite right there is
2016, the Freedom Caucus rejoined the GOP caucus. I would argue that we are still members of the GOP caucus by the rules, since I voted on the rules and elected the majority leader. There's one that's back in the room until we signed this Rule 16 part that they added. If you're unfamiliar with this, Rule 16 is a recent innovation. They added the caucus rules this year that says that no member of the caucus can participate in any campaign activity regarding another member of the caucus. So if somebody else is running against the current, like an incumbent, you can't do anything to help that person. It's not very well defined. We asked, this was the topic of an hour-plus long discussion in that first caucus meeting where I got the consenting clause. Several people asked, like, hey, what if my brother runs in another part of the state? Can I support him? Will this rule prohibit that? The answer was basically yes. A whole lot of stuff. So if Rule 16 was removed, I mean, Rule 16 to me was the crux of the problem, of the issue. So, I mean, that if they removed that, I think there's a pretty good chance, yeah, we wouldn't be allowed back in the room if it was removed.
Can I ask you a question?
This is the first time, in the U.S. where this rule is in place.
Yeah.
So for the first time, South Carolina's the first.
The only Republican or Democrat House caucus that has a rule like this in the whole thing.
And some other states have tried it and actually got held up in court and thrown out because the actual, and I'm not saying this was happening here, but this was an actual argument that happened in the other states that attempted to do something similar. It was considered almost like a quid pro quo. If you're not in the caucus, then you don't get the caucus dues, the campaign designations and the help and things like that. But so we got thrown out. I think that was one of the Dakotas was the reason they got thrown out there. But other than that, I'm not aware of any other state that has actually tried to do this, whether it's Republican House Caucus or Democrat House Caucus or Senate House Caucus or Democrat. In fact, I think it was Congressman Norman said they wouldn't even try something like this in D.C. He was like, "This is pretty brazen." So that should tell you something.
Gil, did you have a question?
I'm not a part of the Freedom Caucus, guys. I don't think that I'm an enemy. I hope because we're all conservatives. But the one thing that I feel like is really important that always gets left out of the conversation, and I'm not going to go into the who's brought up the rule signing and all that, because that's kind of he said, she said, I guess at this point. I think it's exhausting. The one thing that I don't hear a lot of is explain for us what is the remedy. For example, let's say you did sign the rules and you did do something that violated the rules. Explain to everybody what the proposed remedy would be and what it would mean.
Yeah. So part of the signature block, which is kind of innovation too, it says I will adhere, abide by, and comply with the rules. So that's a new part too. And if you break the rules, then the caucus could vote with 2/3 majority to kick you out of the caucus.
2/3.
It would take 2/3 to do that. Now, and I had several members during this initial few weeks of this issue problem coming up. I had a few members come up and say, "Hey, just sign it, even if you don't intend to follow." I didn't come to Columbia to like destroy my integrity the first week.
Yeah, right on. Right on.
Like if I fully intended to be okay with the rule, and there's some members who signed it and said, I never intended to do this, and I'm not going to do this, even if the rule didn't say that it's a short bill, I'd never brought sign it. That's great. The way I look at it is, if I'm representing people in 117, if I'm representing them well, if there's another member from some other part of the state who says they're conservative, and they consistently vote, I mean, it's not like we don't have some senators who consistently vote, or maybe even filibuster pro-life bills. In the Senate last week, like with stuff like that.
Yeah.
How am I helping my folks in 117 if I know there's a challenger and somebody like that's a district, and they ask for my help, even if it's taking a picture with them and saying, "Hey, yeah, go support this person," I'm doing a disservice to my folks by not helping. That's the way I look at it.
And two, I'll add to that. Like I said, no one is defining the Republican platform with these rules. It's mostly to protect or get rid of transparency and accountability, because I can't talk about, whatever somebody else is doing. Or it was even said if I attend someone else's campaign event that's running against an incumbent, and our pictures taken together, that's me endorsing and supporting them. And so my suggestion to them was, if you
majority of the caucus voted to get rid of the rule, then the rule would be gone.
So that one rule was gone, everything would be fine.
In my opinion, yeah, probably.
Is that rule even necessary? Why do we have to have that? I mean, to me, it's kind of un-American to tell somebody they can't support another candidate, regardless of what party it's from.
I don't want to, cause a ruckus, but there was something that happened, a specific something that happened with the vice chairman of the Freedom Caucus. He's a campaign consultant. I believe he runs Jacob Martin's campaign. I think he runs both of you guys' campaigns. He runs a lot of the Freedom Caucus campaigns. His name's RJ Mann. And what happened was that, and they're right here to correct me if I'm wrong, but there was an issue where he used allegedly, I'm a lawyer, so I'll say allegedly so he's not here to defend himself, but allegedly he used a confidential conversation that happened, because, when you have caucus, like they have a caucus, their rules are confidential, and their meetings are, I guess like their rules are confidential, our caucus conversations are confidential too. And something that happened in that confidential conversation was used by RJ to campaign against a guy named Travis Moore, who was from the upstate. He's, conservative, like he's probably his voting record is a heck of a lot more conservative than mine was last session, to be honest. And so when that happened, when they used that information, it was the first time that something like that had happened before, and that caused a great distrust between all the members. Like, how do we have conversations if it could be used against us in this way? And that's how the ball got rolled.
But we're here now, right?
Yeah.
And we've got to legislate. You guys got to work together. So if that's the one, would you have a problem removing that rule?
I want reconciliation in whatever way, but I think I was a pastor for 8 years, and if there's a division in a marriage, sometimes you have to make inroads to start rebuilding that trust. And I think with some of those things that took place, there was a real distrust, that there was a breaking down of the trust. And I think I'd love to figure out a way, if it's not Rule 16, to figure that out. But
what I'm asking specifically is that specific rules. What I'm asking, would you have a problem removing that rule? That's what I'm asking specifically.
I personally don't have a problem removing that rule.
So if that comes up, you would agree to remove it?
I personally don't disagree with you in removing the rule. So I'm for removing the rule. But I do think that it can't simply be removing the rule, because we trust each other. Does that make sense? Like, if we're having a closer conversation, and because we hash out stuff all the time, and sometimes we say like, well, what if we do this? Well, I think this, and then I change my mind. I'm like, well, maybe I don't think this. Let me think this through. If it comes out that Gil said blah blah blah, and it gets used against me in favor of using a mailer, for example, for my opponent, it's hard for me to help my constituents, because we're not really hashing things out in our committee meetings, or in our caucus meetings. So I'd be willing to do whatever it would take, but there has to be a rebuilding of trust.
This is a pretty common conflation. So in Rule 16 is the campaigning, and Rule 15 is about confidentiality. And to my knowledge, none of us are against the idea that the rule about confidentiality, same consequences, like you break confidentiality of these discussions we're having, then 2/3 kick you out.
Yeah, I know.
So, right, so that, I don't want that to be conflated where campaigning becomes confidentiality. They're not one and the same thing. We're all fine with 15, and 16 is the issue.
Well, I agree with you. I mean, and we're all basically, aside from the amendments, there's a lot of the amendments on the table, but we're all voting basically the same way if you look at our voting records. So, I mean, I think there's more similarities between GOP caucus members and Freedom Caucus members than there are differences. I know there's some, but I think we're more similar than we are.
Would you agree with that?
No, I don't.
You never know your head guess. Was that a I would agree, or was that a no?
Look at the voting record. Yeah, look at the voting record. Yeah. Just pull up the voting record.
Yeah, a lot of Republicans vote straight with the Democrats too. Yes.
I mean,
Discussing the voting records, and I think that's up for debate.
I mean, I'm a voter, so I mean, I can tell you I don't vote with the Democrats.
If I could say something, the big differentiator in the voting, when you look at the final vote, a lot of the Freedom Caucus members will vote with them, pass. But the big differentiator comes in the amendments when they're trying to be strengthened. When a Freedom Caucus member, or any member for that matter, is putting an amendment up to try to strengthen a bill. Some of these bills are so weak. For instance, or even a left-wing bill like the hate crimes bill. But then the pro-life bills gets weakened down, and you've got members trying to strengthen those bills. That's where you'll see the stark difference between the voting.
Well, Bob, I mean,
yes, yeah, it is.
One of the amendments is to the Peacock's bill was to not apply to redheaded people, and to not to apply to obese people. And some of the amendments are just not really.
Yeah, I think we both know I'm talking about the ones that strengthen the bill.
Let's get back on topic.
The hate crime bill actually had where we're defining sex and gender as two different things in our law. And so I put up an amendment to strike that from the hate crimes bill and define what a man and what a woman is. Put a definition of what a man and what a woman is, and my amendment was voted down.
Yeah, there was an amendment to strengthen the pro-life bill to give a real penalty to physicians that perform the abortion, right? I mean, there's not even no penalty for women in there. But, so let's just say there's even the penalty for a physician. If you're going to have a bill that bans abortion, there's got to be some kind of penalty. And that's the question?
This question here says, what's your take on the Human Life Protection Act, so H374, that failed in the Senate last week. You take a stab at it?
What does it say?
The House Human Life Protection Act.
What is my take on it? Well, we took what we could get in the House. Of course, we would want a stronger bill.
And what happened when you tried to strengthen it with bigger penalties?
Like murder for a woman?
No, it wasn't murder. It was just to strengthen I read the amendment. It was to strengthen the penalty on physicians from $2,000 to $10,000. Let's one talk at a time. To strengthen that penalty, and what happened when you tried to strengthen that penalty?
I think Magnuson brought that amendment. So the H3774, the House bill, the penalty for adoption would be up to 2 years in prison for performing an abortion. It would be, if it would have passed, the weakest anti-abortion law in a Republican state. So I think Josiah's amendment would have made it 10 years in prison, basically mirrored the fentanyl bill we had just passed the week before, where if you're caught distributing fentanyl, it's a minimum 10-year sentence. So same idea, if kill a baby, minimum 10-year sentence. And then it got voted down by the majority of the House.
So that was my point. That's where the differences really take place, right?
Yes.
And when you're trying to strengthen.
And so I would say when it comes to life that I think mother is always the victim, and the doctors, they should be definitely punished because they're the ones offering and performing the abortion.
Right.
But two, I'll say, I don't know in South Carolina when we're going to get a stronger pro-life bill passed. We're going to have to take what we can get at this point. But you can't legislate the heart. And that's what I talk to people about all the time, is that we have to get out in the schools. We need to speak more about abstinence. We need to work more on adoption reform.
We passed about, I don't know, 8 or 10 adoption reform bills in the House this year. That's actually a really good thing. We voted all together with.
Yeah, and so
I
think just continuing on that path, but as a community, I always speak to, we need to get out there and talk more about abortion and what it does and the causes of that and the effects of consequences of decisions that you make. But once you're pregnant, I go back to the church too. If you're unwed, whatever situation, and you're pregnant, we shouldn't judge anyone because that's a baby. We'll say, oh yeah, there's a baby, what can we do to help? Where do we go from here?
Amen.
So I just encourage changing the narrative and doing what we can.
And essentially, I'll just quickly say, the reason what happened in the Senate happened last week is because the senators are in the Senate. One of which is from just down the road, who had three Republican women senators, and then 3 Republican men had a filibuster to kill this bill. So if we want a stronger bill, people in the district's got to change something.
Representative Hayes, my question is on that. So the Senate has passed basically a revised version of the heartbeat bill. As we know, Republicans campaigned for life. Tom Davis admitted on the Senate floor last week that yes, I said I was against abortion, but guess what? The Supreme Court rule came down and I've changed my opinion. That's not surprising. So my question is, would you expect the House to take out the heartbeat bill? Because that's the best we can get. Our abortions have tripled in South Carolina.
We become a destination state.
So is that going to happen this cycle?
I hope so.
Can I just point out that that issue, we are so united. And I really, I'm not here to correct the party, but I really am hoping and praying that we can figure figure out ways to unite on those issues where we agree, because that's the Senate's problem. They're having some problems with having true conservatism and pro-life people over there. This is where like Freedom Caucus guys and GOP caucus guys can stand strong and unite. And I feel like we're missing opportunities to win because of the division between them.
Y'all voted together on that bill, but that's one issue.
Yeah, we voted together on lots of
But it did pass from you guys, it just failed in the Senate, right? And what's frustrating is, we're all Republicans. We all agree that, we got one of the weakest abortion bills in the nation, 22 weeks or whatever it is. I said 3,000 so far this year, 900 of them from the states. I mean, if that's one thing that we all agree on,
well, as
most of the
far
people
as
outside of the
education
most of the people outside of this room don't know all the impact that's going on. All they see is bills not being passed, right? So if those are core, if life is a core Republican, you guys passed it. Why can't we come together on this? It's frustrating to us.
Well, education is so important. I lobbied for the right to life in Virginia, and what people are not seeing is that we have opened the floodgates to the barbaric baby butchering billionaires. If a woman in crisis or all these, snowflakes or, just young people who are for equality, for human rights can see that we have a whole industry that not only wants to take advantage of women in crisis, but they want to traffic the baby's organs. They want to work with statutory rapists. They are going to bring the victims from the open borders here. All those other states are closed. But we are dealing with the barbaric baby butchering billionaires. If we can educate people and not just be on the offensive, but go on the defensive, but go on the offensive and say, we cannot have this here.
So I'm hoping the House brings it up. It's going to go to judiciary to get the House forward. So I summed up every pro-life bill was filed. So we move it 1 week at a time. I prefer to move it up to where it should be, like conceptually, but So.
And for those of you that don't know, Sandy Senate is in Dorchester, and I see people that live in her district, 2 people right in the front row, Miss June and Rhonda, recruit somebody, run against her, because I certainly don't think that she represents the Republican Party.
Yes. Say that again.
How can we do it? What can we do to get more bills passed, better bills without being watered down?
Build relationships. We can do it together.
I would say, I think building a relationship with who you've elected at every level, starting with school board, I think y'all were mentioning that earlier, school board, county council, state representative, just know what they're doing, have that relationship. I think, the tone is important. So I think just having a rational conversation with someone, being in business, it's a different mindset, because in business, we have 120 something employees. So you do what's best for the business and what's gonna keep your employees employed. And so I think, like you said, relationships are important, but a business relationship. So anyone it could be a Democrat, if they're working on something that we have a common goal of, I'll work with them. It's not personal. And when you get there and people take stuff personal, they're not going to vote on your bill, they're not going to support you because they don't like you, that's not their job. They're not there for that. They're there to be the voice of their people and to give them the best representation. And if they're not doing that, one, they need to grow up. This is not middle school. You are an adult and you were elected to office to be the voice of 40-something thousand people. And if you can't put your personal agenda aside when you're in the office, because you have to have thick skin.
At a fundamental level, you have to write those amendments, present those amendments, for them to give you a vote. So it's a little bit of a culture change. Culture in the past has been, especially if you're a freshman, you sit down, you shut up, you don't ask questions, you don't make as much, you definitely don't read amendments.
So